Warning, the following video has flashing lights and also includes content that may be deemed inappropriate for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Dirty Birdy, Kelly, you have once again found your way into the darkness of the Fox Den for this episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on StarFox Radio. Yeah, you do need me to allow feasting time. Much better. They had it coming, no worries. Well, now that I am fully recharged, revamped, it is once again time for Dirty Birdy and StarFox Radio to take a walk into the darkness.
It stood up. I said, oh my god, it's a werewolf, and everybody in the car freaked out.
My creatures of the night, yes, welcome back once again to another episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on StarFox Radio. We again have Kelly, Dirty Birdy, who is also a member of the North American Dogman Project, who's going to sit around the late night fire and burn the midnight timber with us in an attempt to figure out what is occurring. So again, we pick up the Midnight Society book to read a few chapters. Kelly, my dude, how the heck you been?
I've been doing all right. It's finally winter here in southeast Idaho, so it's going to start getting cold, dark, and nasty for the next couple weeks. Other than that, just living life, trying to figure out stuff. You know what I mean?
Yes, that is very awesome right there. Not right. And to answer your question on what you had just said, you can have up to 100 people on Skype, bro, at a time.
Nice.
You want to talk about chaos? Whole lot of raising hands right there, right?
Oh boy.
But yeah, it's pretty cool stuff. That's just another reason. Don't get me wrong. I mean, you can record now on Apple and stuff, and I don't know. I understand StreamYard if I go live, blah. Skype works for me, man. I can just download the audio. Doesn't clog up my phone, man. And I mean, it's been around for like what, freaking 100 years? Not really, but I mean, long enough where it's pretty established, correct?
Yeah, it's got to be like, oh my god, maybe 15.
Yes, that's what I'm saying, man. After 15 years, dude, and you're still kicking around, you probably have your stuff pretty well figured out. Don't get me wrong, knock on wood, every once in a while, just like with anything else, I have an issue with Skype, but around 94% of the time, man, it works pretty damn well for me, so.
Yeah, good old reliable technology. Oh. Yeah, we were talking earlier about what a nightmare my podcast has had for the past month trying to go live, and sometimes it wants to work, sometimes it doesn't, and some days is just some of us want to punch a laptop day.
Yeah, don't do that though, man. I mean, as much as you back in the day might have been able to knock around your Nintendo a little bit and then it works, it's not really how you're supposed to do things. Like, I one time witnessed somebody having issues with their Xbox, and they started to think by dropping it from waist down onto the floor, it would make it work. And I was like, yeah, it doesn't really work like that.
No, it's only 2 or 3 inches. A half a foot.
So funny though. But yeah, tonight to the audience, we actually have a 2-section part right here. What I'm trying to do with my consistent hosts, and yes, Kelly is bi-weekly, so he is consistent. I'd like to give a little bit of a background check as to what they've been up to, why they got into this in the first place, and also to tie it up, we are going to talk about a pretty infamous case that occurred down in Vidor, Texas, with Robert Bobby Businger. But before we dive into that, Kelly, would you like to just give a little bit of fact check as to who you are, why you got into this, how long you've been rolling into the cryptid aspects, and what cryptids are your favorite, man?
All right. So my name is Kelly. I go by Dirty Birdy online. I first got into cryptids way back in maybe, I'm trying to think here, 93, when there was a special hour-long episode of Unsolved Mysteries, and they were doing Bigfoot. And I'm like, what the heck is a Bigfoot? And I watched that, and I'm like, we have those? We seriously have these things walking around the Pacific Northwest. Well, that's great. They're in the Pacific Northwest. We're nowhere near that. And yeah, the more research I did over the years, come to find out they are in 49 states except for Hawaii and Canada and Mexico, South America. They're all over. And then this Dogman phenomenon started. How many years ago was this?
It's been a minute, man, for sure. And actually, we can dive into this more, but we are working on a hypothesis that actually, even though Michigan kind of gets that first nod of, I believe, 1887, that is incorrect. We actually up here in Maine have cases that predate that by almost 30 years. And what we think might have happened is it could have potentially started up here on the East Coast, and then they just cut across into Canada and then went down through Toronto into Michigan and such. So.
Well, yeah, I'm pretty sure that they crossed the Bering land Strait like everything else, and it's cold up there, so they're new, and they went south, and that's where they are, and they proliferated. Nope, that's not a word. Anyway, they got established, and they moved all over the country. I mean, when I first heard about it, I heard about the Michigan Dogman, and I'm like, that's interesting. And then I heard of a really compelling story out of Youngstown, Ohio, and that guy has been on multiple podcasts telling his story. I'm like, that's interesting. And I'm like, good thing they're not out west. Wrong. There was 3 cases, documented cases, one in Oregon, one in Montana. I mean, geez, I think one close to here. And I think I mentioned to you about the legend of the werewolf in Idaho Falls. That was interesting.
Great stuff right there, man. And yes, you and I did speak about that, and it's pretty gnarly for sure, because there's a lot of BS, but then there's also a lot of really interesting stuff out there for sure. And I mean, just on a daily basis, I keep finding out more stuff just about things, like, even though we're here to talk about something else, like example, Patterson Gimlin footage. Just recently, again, I found out that someone that was involved with Patterson was a gentleman that had already been involved in a few hoaxes and would have had capabilities to have access to that costume. And I saw some new takes as to no other primate, even though that looks like a primate, have fur and such on their breasts, meaning female gorillas and things do not. So it's just every day, man, I kind of teeter on that, because Patterson, all right, he was involved in shady stuff. He also was involved with a television network that was trying to look for Bigfoot. Also, they played this at old movie theaters, which means they were trying to make a revenue off it. So again, I just think one of those takes, man, is true, but we're never really going to be able to potentially figure out what's going on. And I personally think Gimlin, he's the man. I don't think he had anything to do with this. I think he got bamboozled by Patterson and the others because he and some trackers stepped away to try and follow supposedly the area that this went off to. And then that would have left Patterson by himself for a pretty solid period of time, which in theory would have allowed him and that other dude to hoax that real quick without Gimlin knowing. So it's a lot of red flags over Patterson.
Yeah, what was his name? Bob Hieronymus? Is that the guy, the third person that was involved?
I believe so, yes.
You know, it's such a murky thing.
Yep.
And Bigfoot is one of my favorite cryptids of all time. And you know, I had an experience like 2 years ago. I didn't see anything. I didn't smell anything, but I definitely heard something. And if you know, if none of our listeners has ever had an experience with whoops or howls, or in my case, wood knocks and a really quick, loud roar, you don't usually get that out in the woods. And I wasn't out in the woods. I was on somebody's property in a canyon with no tree. Well, there was a couple of small apple trees and a pasture where this was, but nothing else. It was all pasture and maybe a few willows and some junipers, but yeah. That oh man, that'll change your life. That'll make you rethink things, especially Dogman or Sasquatch. They're terrifying.
Pretty gnarly stuff, man, for sure. And before we start kind of cranking out some interesting stuff tonight, check out your text I just sent you. That is what I and others believe Sasquatch looks like. And again, that does not look like the Patterson Gimlin footage whatsoever.
Yeah, that is, like I said, I've never seen one.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't confirm or deny that's what it is, but I mean, that is close.
I agree, brother. And that's just what I mean about the big difference in the comparison. And I cannot show this to everybody because this is from North 02, but go check out his page. He recently posted this and you will be able to see. But yes, that does not look like Patterson Gimlin, but that does look like a hominoidish that could be tied in with us. So really interesting stuff.
Yeah, that's really close, but yeah, from what I heard, you know, a lot of descriptions. The nose is a little bigger, a little flatter, more of a pointed head.
Mm-hmm.
Eyes are a little more spaced out. I don't know. They come in all shapes and sizes, man, and colors.
No, 100%. I just really like how they showed kind of the body structure, though, and how when you look at the Patterson Gimlin footage, that doesn't look like any known really ape or a way an ape would move, but it also doesn't look like any sort of relic ancestor that we would have had that could have fit into some of these missing links. Okay, so that would only leave one other option here, that it's not a hominoid or a primate, which would make no logical sense to me, or it was hoaxed in that video. I know it exists, okay? We don't need to ever touch base on that. I'm just saying some of the more substantial claims are actually hoaxes, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate realization that science is going to need a body.
Mm-hmm.
And There's the other conundrum, though, is that we need a body, but we can never find a body. And, if you ever do come across a body, how are you going to get it out of there? It's anywhere from 8 to 12 feet tall, especially in the middle of the woods. I know you do a lot of hiking, and you probably go like light camping, right? Or hiking. Carry as little as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, you come across one, you're like, awesome, I got it. Now what do I do?
Right? No, that is so true. And I actually have a theory on that as well. And I wish I had some people that specialized in primates and such to correct me if I'm wrong here. But I do know not many gorilla and other large apes like orangutans and such, not many of their skeletons in general have been found because they bury their deceased in basically like coffins kind of with bamboo and leaves, and then they put them in an area where they're more or less kind of protected. Again, I don't really think the odds of us finding that is really that realistic because if they are posted up in caves or burrows underneath the ground, again, they're going to go back to that area. I mean, I assume most people out there have had a house cat before, and unfortunately, it happened to me. We had an older cat that went out one day and he never came back, and we never found him. He obviously crawled into somewhere or underneath a house somewhere, and well, that's where he felt safe enough to then pass away, and we never found him. That's a house cat. I mean, we knew he existed. He was ours. We pet him every day. We fed him, but we have no corpse to show that. We only have pictures, you know?
Yeah. I'm not a biologist by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think that they bury their if they come across them.
Mm-hmm.
They might, if it's recent, they might cannibalize them.
Mm-hmm.
But even I don't know how. Even if they do bury them, I don't know how deep they would bury them. But even if they do bury them and there's a smell that comes out of the ground, there's going to be scavengers coming around, and they'll dig it up. They'll carry off the bones. Some will eat the bones, and I found this super interesting. But even porcupines and squirrels and mice will carry off the bones and eat those because of the calcium. They don't get calcium.
Yep. I can contest to all of that because some of the neighborhood squirrels, including my squirrel, love to eat like chicken bones and eggshells. And well, I really feel bad doing this, but you can't have mice in your house. So yeah, obviously we caught a mouse. I threw it outside, and one of the neighborhood squirrels then decided to eat it. And I looked out and I was like, wow, for such a cute little guy with your mouth all bloody, you are a savage, eh?
Yeah. It's amazing, isn't it? And even the soil, especially in the Pacific Northwest, is highly acidic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, out here, I don't know what our soil is. I mean, it's volcanic soil, so I assume it's kind of acidic. But you take bones and you spread them out all over the place, and something buries them. That soil's going to eat it eventually, and then it'll be nothing. But
people don't realize how hard it is for something to fossilize, just in general, man. We don't even have that many remnants of our ancestors, okay? And we weren't even that big. People don't also realize that, for example, we know dinosaurs existed, but do people also realize the odds of us finding every species of dinosaur to ever exist is almost 0 to none? And same thing with other animals that have once roamed this earth, because the larger you are, again, your bones spread out, okay? So that's why they don't find complete dinosaur skeletons. Say like a brachiosaurus is an enormous animal. Well, it gets spread apart, which is why you only find a few vertebrae, a kneecap, a skull here. But then when you look at things that are smaller, like in the ocean and such, those things tend to get fossilized perfectly, whether it's like shellfish or things like that, because they're small and then they can be condensed and then fossilized. But when you have a 50-foot dinosaur sticking up out of sand, like you said, everything's going to come consume it.
That depends on where they dropped. So I don't think you have, but if you ever get the chance, go see Dinosaur National Monument. They have an interesting display of a mud pit that was around millions of years ago, and it's layered, and they have different species of dinosaur that have died in this mud pit. It goes anywhere from 50 million, 20 million, 10 million, and up, and it's just filled with dinosaur bones, real dinosaur bones. It's really super interesting. So
Yeah.
sometimes, I'm just saying, sometimes things on solid earth, they get scattered. But if you fall into a tar pit or a mud pit
Yes.
and you drop, that's where you stay.
No, for sure. And isn't that fascinating? Because then you have something like the megalodon, where we only have fragments of the teeth and little pieces of the jaw because sharks are made out of cartilage. And again, cartilage doesn't fossilize. If we hadn't even found those teeth, we wouldn't even have known that megalodon ever existed. Again, it's just super fascinating as well to really think about that. And tonight, man, I was wondering what you thought about that whole case down in Texas with Bobby Robert Businger. And I am very well versed with this, yet I think I'm going to toss you the mic and then I will respond for sure.
So, yeah, you sent me this and I dug into it a little bit. I watched the YouTube video on it and I found this really strange but interesting at the same time. I mean, Bobby and his wife were 20 years old. They moved into this house, and for 3.5 weeks, they were terrorized by something. What did they say? 6'4", huge. He said it was huge, wide, and terrifying. And for some reason, the previous tenants left because of the same thing. And I don't know why. I don't know why after this he didn't get a hold of the previous tenants, probably because they didn't know who they were, and asked them the same thing, like what was happening. Because people just don't pick up and move unless something forces them to move. And I'm reading into this, and she said it wasn't. His wife said that it wasn't bad at first, but then one night it got really bad. She was saying that 3 of their dogs got, and I remember listening to the podcast, and Bobby was he confided in somebody saying that he's hearing weird howls and scratching on their house, tapping on the windows, and something banging on the side of his house, causing all sorts of ruckus. And his friend was like, I'll lend you some of my guard dogs. And he's like, okay. He's like, I'll give you 3 of them. And they'll attack anything. They'll guard your house. They'll rip anything apart. And after this is all said and done, I'll pick them up the next morning. Well, all this is going down. He said he watched this creature just walk through these dogs, just rip them apart. And he said he didn't have a weapon. It was just teeth and claws, or teeth and hands. This creature was ripping these things apart. And oh boy, terrifying. That would be terrifying. But he went outside because there was more banging and rapping on the windows, and you could hear this thing walking around. So he went outside with his 12 gauge shotgun and saw this thing. So he fired a shot at it. I don't think he hit it. But, you know, this is 1978. I don't know if they had like lights on the front porch or anything like that. But going outside and seeing a, 6'5" hulking beast of a whatever, you're not going to take real careful aim, but I think he probably tried to hip shoot it, fired a shot. This thing turned and growled at him, and he just went barreling into the house. He said he barely made it, and they looked around the next day, and they had scratched up screens on their windows, and these aren't the nylon mesh screens that we have now. These are solid metal screens, and he said it looked like somebody with fingers scratched down the screen. That would put me off for sure. And eventually, after this incident where he shot at it, he called the cops. The cops came out, did a patrol, and they didn't see anything, but I think they heard something. Yeah, I think his name was Officer Reeves. Said, I heard growling and howling in the distance. It sounded like a cross between the noise of a hyena and an injured dog. And he said he went into the woods looking for it, and he said that it was making the same sounds, but it was going off in the distance, like he scared it off. So this is all going on. He parked his car a block away. He said he was under a streetlight or something like that, and he heard his radio turn on, and something was back at the house, scratching, banging on the window screens. Said he was only gone 5 minutes. And he pulled into the driveway, and it backed off. Businger said he saw it again, and it was 50 yards off, huge form in the shadows. And he said he saw it in between the V of two small oaks, and that was it. They packed up and they went to his father-in-law's, and rightfully so. I mean, that's terrifying. And when I listened to the podcast or the YouTube video, they said it was an escaped patient from an insane asylum. While this is all going on, he was talking to the sheriff or whatever, and he distinctly said, "We know who it is," just out of the blue. Yeah, we know who it is. And a couple of days later, they caught him, and they put him back in the mental institution. And come to find out, later on, this guy is a 6'4" bodybuilder that doesn't feel any pain whatsoever. And it's a very rare condition, and it's called congenital insensitivity to pain. They're born without pain receptors. So that in itself is terrifying, because if you know anybody that does bodybuilding or powerlifting, we have resistors in our brains that tell us that's enough, otherwise you're going to break something. Now, if you don't feel any pain, you could probably get as big as hell. And 6'4" giant of a bodybuilder is terrifying. That doesn't feel any pain. I mean, and come to find out that this guy is in an insane asylum. He gets loose somehow, and he just plows through 3 orderlies. They don't know if they seriously injured them or knocked them out. Nobody said anything. But he gets out of the institution, and apparently this house is the home he grew up in with his grandparents. He's essentially going home. He gets to the house and he sees different people are living in there. And for whatever reason, he turns to growling and howling and banging on the house, trying to scare these people out of there. And I mean, a 6'4" bodybuilder, when they're saying that he's hitting the side of the house, he's literally punching the side of this house, trying to either get in or scare the crap out of people. And I mean, the wire mesh screens, and he just takes his fingers and scratches right through it. That would hurt a normal person. And just, I think the wife said that there was a pretty well-worn game trail going into the back of the property where they found a kind of a makeshift lean-to where somebody could be sleeping in. Apparently, that's not true. That never happened. I mean, when I was a kid and going to high school, or no, I was actually a young adult, I would hear stories about my dad. And apparently my dad was a brawler. And he was 6'3", 320 pounds of hulking muscle. I mean, he worked after school at my grandpa's mechanic shop, and he did all the heavy lifting, apparently. And I mean, heavy lifting, like pick up a car transmission and move it from here to there, inch a block from here to there. He was a hulk of a man. And apparently one of the stories I heard was that he was at the drive-in. Some guys from another school wanted to get into a scuffle. They sucker punched him and ran out to their VW Bug, and my dad was right on him. This guy jumps in the passenger side seat, tries to shut the door. It shuts, and the door shuts. My dad grabs the door. And my dad was essentially a pretty cool dude unless you made him mad. And this guy shuts the door. Dad grabs the door on this VW Bug and literally rips it off and tosses it and grabs the guy in the passenger seat and pretty much, gives them what for. Anyway, so yeah, I could see a 6'4" mentally ill person that doesn't feel any pain tearing through a house. And that's my 2 cents on that.
Beautiful stuff right there, man. And well, you pretty much hit that right on the top of the nail right there. I mean, I don't really need to touch base too much on that. I mean, the only thing that I will kind of clean up a little bit is, like they were some guard dogs that were brought in from some of his friends, Bobby's friends, to kind of, deter whatever was occurring. And this guy just shredded those things. And when he was found, he was walking down the middle of the street, just covered in his own blood and also the blood of these dogs he tore apart. It's just really bizarre because obviously he had something psychologically going on, which reminds me of some of those tales in the past where people thought they were actually like transforming, because originally when the newspapers dropped this, they actually went with the whole thing sounding like it was a werewolf. I mean, we have legit the original newspaper articles, and now fast forward to when Bobby's able to sit down and talk. There's nothing about this guy that looked like a werewolf at all except for his behaviorisms. So yeah, it's pretty bizarre stuff, man.
Yeah, and I did remember that Bobby was saying that he was in that mental institution because of drugs. Now,
yes,
this reminds me of a local legend around here about a cop pulling over a car. They think he's been drinking and driving, what have you. Okay, we got to search your car. We think you're drinking and driving. I mean, we smell alcohol on you, so we're gonna, we're looking for a bottle or whatever. Pop the trunk, and he's got 4 gallon jars of clear liquid. And this state trooper thinks, okay, score. Got moonshine. And he pops the top of one of these jugs, and, the suspect is like, I wouldn't do that if I were you. And the cop is like, what? It's moonshine. And he's like, I seriously wouldn't. And he takes his finger, dips it in this liquid, and puts it up to his nose, and he's like, this doesn't smell like alcohol. And he's like, whatever you do, do not. The suspect's like, whatever you do not, lick your finger, which is already too late, by the way. And, of course, he licks his finger. And the story goes is that he dipped his finger in the strongest liquid ever. And if you know the story, you don't have to ingest it. You just have to touch it. Mm-hmm. And he put his whole finger in his. He got like hundreds of hits. And apparently, it fried his brain so bad he thought he went to a mental institution, and he thought he was an orange. Mm-hmm. So when I heard the story that this guy was in a mental institution for drugs and he got out, it made me think, did this guy take way too much and thought he was a werewolf?
Yes, that's all I was potentially just trying to hint at a little bit, because, we got to be logical about it. And as we are starting to kind of wrap this up, we did have a kid that went to school with us that, had some substances on him that he should not have, and got pulled over and decided to consume all of them. And he ended up going into, an insane asylum as well, because he thought he was a glass of water that every time he touched him, he was going to tip over. Yeah, dude, it's crazy, bro. But it's like you were saying.
Yeah, it's a local legend of mine. People are like saying, "Oh, that's not true," and it never happened. I'm like, I keep hearing this all the time.
Dude, yeah. I mean, we knew the kid up here, bro. I mean, I don't know what has happened to him since then, but I mean, I could verify that he left our school and did get put into some sort of care center because, he was just gone, bro. So,
now it starts to make more sense that a 6'4" bodybuilder that feels no pain, somehow takes way too much, somehow thinks he's a werewolf, and then one day he's just like, I want to go home, and tears through 3 guards, goes to his grandparents' house, sees people already living there, and he's like, nope, they need to leave.
Yes, exactly. 100%, man. That's my thought on it right there, too. You hit it well. I mean, I'm not saying, I guess maybe more couldn't be involved, but Bobby had this happen to him, and he legit says that there was no sort of werewolf depiction of this guy whatsoever, and that, yes, he had mental issues, he had substance abuse issues, he was a bodybuilder, roid head, and a ton of different things, man. So, when you get to a point of not even being under a substance, I mean, just as we start to tie this up, an example, how many times in war, right, does somebody get lit up, man, where if we were just sitting here, they wouldn't be alive, but their adrenaline's pumped up, their blood pressure's flying, they're out there saving people, still firing. All of a sudden, everyone's like sitting down, and they're like, oh no, Dirty's been hit. You look over, you got like 8 bullet wounds in you, and then you're deceased now because all of a sudden your adrenaline went down. But when you were all pumped up, you didn't feel any of that stuff. You were just going insane,
Nope.
All right, man. Well, excellent stuff right there. And do you have anything else you would like to touch base on before we let you get back to your busy schedule, man?
Come check us out on the Nightmare Red Show on YouTube. We try to go live on 7 p.m. on Thursday nights. We have I think we have a TikTok. You can check us out there. We have a Teespring shop. I think it's Teespring/NRS. Do some shirts and stuff like that. Decon does all our artwork. Check that out. And other than that, nope, I'm pretty much good to go.
Beautiful, man. Well, thanks for hanging out with us again tonight. And to the audience, yes, Kelly Dirty Birdy does have things he needs to attend to. Even though it would be excellent to just sit here all night and speak, he will, of course, be back in a week. And we will again be diving into this subject. Yet, as stated, Kelly's got his own channel, so if you would like to hear him, check that out. And we will have all the links up in the description, like always. So yes, man, keep on doing the good stuff. I appreciate you, and hell yeah, man.
Yeah, it's always fun hanging out with you, bro.
Ooh, you legends, you. I do adore every single one of you. And thank you for hanging out tonight. Please like, comment, subscribe, feed the algorithm, and I will catch you very soon.